Today's guest is a supporting sponsor of Liberty in Finance. Welcome back to Liberty in Finance. We have a returning guest our viewers have been delighted to meet in the past. This is Claudia Tornquist. She is the president and CEO of Kodiak Copper. She joins us this Thursday, November 17th, 2021. Claudia, thank you for coming back on Liberty in Finance.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
We wanted to have you back on to update us on your latest exploration results. We had, when we were here last time in July, middle of the summer, you talked to us about some initial drill results you had. But before we get into the new results that you have, could you first bring us up to date on the big picture of because the last time we talked with you, we spoke about how Keith Neumeyer and Rick Rule were talking about a massive metals shortage coming, the anticipation that with the infrastructure bill and other needs for electrification of the new economy, there's going to be a massive demand increasing for copper, among other metals, and that the decade-long underinvestment in exploration and development leading up to this, partly because or related to the recession that started back at the 2008-2009 time period, and also the lower copper price, which didn't help spur on investment in more exploration, has left us basically a decade behind. So can you talk to us about the big picture? What are you seeing now as far as your current outlook for copper demand and the exploration progress to meet that demand?
You summed it up already very well. I think the fundamentals and the outlook in the copper market is really quite striking. There's a lot of demand on the horizon, and the recent infrastructure bill, and obviously the clean energy, carbon reduction, etc., net zero, that all plays big time into this. All these technologies that are related to electrification, energy transition, whether it's electric vehicles, whether it's wind, solar energy, all these technologies are very copper intensive, use 3, 4, 5 times as much copper as the technologies they replace, fossil fuels. And all these technologies obviously grow very rapidly. If you just look at all the government targets for emissions, or if you look at the car producers' targets for their electric vehicles, it's all very ambitious. And even if only part of those targets get achieved, a lot of copper will be required. So no question, there's no commentator in the market, at least I haven't seen any, who doesn't see a big demand for copper in the foreseeable future. But the other side of the medal, the supply side, looks very, very empty. There's just not much copper in the pipeline, not many projects being developed, not many projects that have been discovered. And so there is a big gap that we will see. Goldman Sachs, they forecasted a gap of 8 million tons of copper in a market that's about 25 million tons by 2030. That's a really big gap. Other forecasters are a little bit more conservative, but there will be a gap, there's no question, and more copper has to be found.
In that environment where there's this almost insatiable demand for copper and a big delay, that a lot of companies like Kodiak trying to play catch up to try to get the world back to where it needs to be in copper exploration, development, discovery. You have some new drill results that are out since we last spoke with you. Could you let us know what kind of promising results or any challenges you see that came from those?
Well, we are drilling this year our MPD copper porphyry project in southern British Columbia, where we were fortunate to make a discovery last year, just about a year ago. And we then raised a significant amount of funds, $12.7 million. And this year, I'm motoring ahead with the largest ever drill program on the property of over 20,000 meters. We've started in March, had already some good results, and have significantly expanded the gate zone discovery to now strike length of almost a kilometer, 950 meters. So it has grown substantially. And we have lots more results to come. Will have drilled by the end of the season, so late this autumn, just under 40 holes. And so far we have results back from 15. There are more results that we expect in December, and then many more in the new year. And of course, we'll also drill in the new year. We have a similarly sized large program plan, and the drilling will continue. So lots of news flow and lots more drill results as we are growing the MPD project, the gate zone, and other targets.
As you summarize the interpretation and the meaning of these drill results, are you seeing basically that you're on track with what you were hoping for or expecting, or is there any areas of more promise or less promise that's getting you to adjust your approach or your strategy, or what areas you're looking?
Look, our aim for this year was to expand and grow the gate zone where we made the discovery. We drilled into a nice high-grade porphyry center there last year. And with this year's drilling, we've expanded the mineralization and the gate zone significantly. It's starting to get some real nice size now. That was our main focus of this year's drilling. What we now will also do is apply the same approach that we successfully used at Gate and test other porphyry centers on the property. We have several other historically drilled areas, target areas, porphyry centers, that had shallow historic drilling, but no deep drilling, and that's exactly what we did at Gate. We drilled deeper below shallow historic drilling, and were very successful, discovered much higher grades. And so we'll use a similar approach to test other targets. One of them, very large one, 2 kilometers away from Gate, is called Dillard, and we have moved one of our drill rigs there already, are testing that as we speak. And there are more on our to-do list for next year.
In addition to this drilling program expansion that you're doing to expand your definition zones of where you see the most promising deposits, you also have been making corporate advancements in areas of ES and G. And we spoke with you briefly about that, the importance of that the last time and the time before that. But what specific new areas have you made advancements as a corporation in that regards since we last met you?
Well, ESG is an important part of our work. It's an important part of reducing risks for the property by just doing the environmental side, the community side of our work well. We make sure that the project is shaped in a way so we don't meet opposition further down the road after investing many millions. And so it's certainly an area that we take very seriously. We have a good, solid environmental program in place. We consult with First Nations and have a very good dialogue with numerous First Nations in the area and keep them informed and consult with them. And we've just recently also strengthened our board with a lady called Lena Eagle, who is a First Nations lady with a very strong background in community relations, Indigenous relations, and government relations. And that certainly also reflects the importance we place on these areas of our work.
I'm thinking of my history as an engineer, and something that my wife also has taught me probably a lot slower than she wishes I would have learned it over the years. And that's that if I get over-focused on just the one thing, I can drive forward and kind of like a bull in a china shop. I can get to the goal, but I might knock a bunch of other things. I might cause a lot of collateral damage along the way. I might create difficulties that take a lot more effort and cost or cause delays than they would have if I'd have done it more holistically. So if I'm understanding correctly, one of the reasons that it's prudent for mineral and natural resource companies to focus on ES and G is that in addition to the geology of what you're trying to accomplish, scientifically or geologically, you're also looking at all other types of risk, whether it's social, whether it's governmental, whether it's environmental, whatever it is, and try to cover those bases so that you're just de-risking the success of your overall endeavor in a more holistic fashion. I mean, that's just from a capitalistic standpoint. You can also say that there's, virtuous reasons why it's the right thing to do. But it's just made a little light bulb went on for me right there, that in my life as an engineer, I've sometimes have gotten so single goal track focused that it would have done me well to look at the whole picture. So I think I understand more based on your explanation. Thank you. You also have the Mohave project in Arizona that's, I believe, another focus for you. You talked about other areas, and if you could help us understand more about the Mohave project.
That's a good question. That's the second porphyry project in our portfolio. We've this year focused mostly on MPD because that's where we made a discovery, have generated a lot of excitement. That's where our shareholder want us to spend the majority of our effort. But having said that, Mohave is also a very interesting project with a lot of discovery potential. We have worked away in the background, extended permits, done some preparatory work, and we'd like to start drilling that project as well next year with a small initial project. It's a very interesting project and in many ways very similar to MPD. It's also in a great location in Arizona, right next to a big copper mine. The mine is called Baghdad, owned by Freeport, very close geological analog to what we have at Mohave. It has fantastic infrastructure. It has been drilled in the past and some interesting results, a lot of smoke, but nobody has really figured out the system yet. And that's what we are aiming to do. And it'll be very interesting. We have a small initial maiden drill program planned then next year. And I'm looking forward to getting to work on Mohave as well.
So you've described the Gate Zone and Mohave and Dillard. Now, Dillard you mentioned just in passing. Can you help us make sure we understand where the geographies, where these are all located?
Dillard and Gate are both part of the MPD project, where we have our main focus of work. Gate is the zone where we made the discovery, and Dillard is one of several other historically drilled porphyry centers that we will yet drill. And like at Gate, we think that the higher grade mineralization is at greater depth below the shallow historic drilling. And we will essentially use the same approach that we used at Gate and replicate at Dillard and at other targets such as Man, Prime, Axe, what we did at Gate successfully. And it'll be very interesting what we can generate in terms of drill results there. I'm very much looking forward to that. It's exciting exploration. I think we have a very good chance of discovering further high-grade zones. And a discovery like that would be really the next very big catalyst for the project. If the market sees that we can replicate what we successfully did at Gate at other targets at the property, that will be a very big step forward for the project.
We started out the discussion talking about the worldwide shortage of copper, especially going forward in the new economy. When speaking with Rick Rule and others, I'm thinking of Steve St. Angelo from the SRS Rocco report about energy, and then Rick Rule and others about water. There's significant concern in the natural resource investment space about not only a shortage of metals, but about shortage of energy in the future or shortage of water. And you're talking about the southwestern U.S. where there's a big drought conditions that have been going on. As you talk about drilling at greater depth, I'm taken back to a tour we did of a historic gold mine area near Phoenix, Arizona, where they talked about they had a very promising mine there that they had to stop. They had to stop doing production because it broke into an underground aquifer and it got flooded, and they couldn't just keep pumping it out because they were told for environmental reasons they couldn't do that. So within all of that, what do you see as the strategies for de-risking going forward from Kodiak's standpoint to mitigate risks due to energy availability and water, either scarcity of water or conservation of use of water in mining, that sort of thing, in these areas?
Well, for MPD, we're very fortunate in British Columbia to have energy that's over 90% from renewable resources, hydro in BC's case. And MPD is an established mining area. We have all the infrastructure nearby and literally a transmission line crossing our property. So we're in a very good place when it comes to energy and water. Also, BC is not a water scarce area, so certainly we are fortunate where we are and have a very good starting point there. And Mohave also in Arizona is in a mining area with infrastructure right there. So whether that's roads, whether that's electricity, that's already established infrastructure, which makes life much easier. Water obviously is a very big topic in Arizona, and mining companies have to work hard to find solutions for their water that work also for the local communities and other stakeholders. And that's again where the whole ESG angle comes in. It's a question of really sitting down with the local stakeholders, with the local communities, and ensuring that there is a strategy in place that, for example, you buy the water and truck it in for your exploration project or whatever the solution might be, but you want a solution that has the support from local stakeholders, and you want that support early, so as not to run into problems later on, where all of a sudden local stakeholders are concerned about the water and oppose the project. So yeah, we're working hard with the stakeholders to make sure we put a solution in place that works.
Along the way through our multiple conversations, you've used the word porphyry several times describing the area where you search quite commonly for defining copper availability. We like to put our CEOs on the hot seat for a little bit to just have them explain a term that may not be familiar to our viewers. So could you please explain to us what is porphyry and why is it the place that you go looking for copper?
Porphyry is a type of copper deposit, arguably the most important type of copper deposit. The majority of the world's copper is mined from porphyries. And porphyries are typically large deposits. Porphyry mines have cost anything up from many hundreds of millions to several billions of dollars to build, and are typically mines that produce for decades and generate hundreds of millions of cash flow every year. So big mines, big deposits. And typically a porphyry is a large volume of lower grade mineralization with some porphyry centers interspersed, one or several, that are higher grade. And often those higher grade porphyry centers are a very important piece of the economics of the deposit. So at MPD, we were able to drill into and make a discovery of a high grade porphyry center. And that is a very important step for the project because the high-grade center plus then the additional low-grade mineralization will eventually, if you continue having success, then lead to an economic scenario and a mine.
So let me understand. It sounds like when you said earlier, you said we found some smoke so far. I think the way I interpret that is where there's smoke, there may be fire, meaning you're finding the low-grade deposits, and where that's the most economic is where those would surround a high-grade center with this porphyry rock, whatever it is, feldspar and quartz or whatever rock in there. So that's what you're looking for, is that payoff, is that high concentration mineralization in the center of that lower concentration zone, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, you've put that well. When you start drilling a porphyry, often you find the outer zone. The porphyry is a very sort of typical zonation. It's a bit like an onion, which has these layers of different styles of alteration, and the innermost, the porphyry center, is the highest grade. So when you start drilling, often you hit the outer zones and find the material and the mineralization and alteration that's typical for those zones, and then you vector your way into the higher grade centers. And so that's the type of work we are doing. And yeah, that's when I said there is smoke. That means there is a lot of porphyry mineralization already, but nobody has found the high grade center yet. And that's yet to be discovered. That's what we'll be working on.
It reminds me of in the medical world where they would have to do exploratory surgery trying to find where rather than having like MRI or something where you can really characterize the whole volume in 3 dimensions. But I know there's different scanning techniques that are being employed in different areas in addition to the drilling, which is the final proof of what's actually there. If people want to find out more about Kodiak and the progress that you're making, where should they stay plugged in?
Our website is kodiakcoppercorp.com, and obviously our social media is also a good source of information, whether that's Twitter or others.
We'll put links to those in the description of this video, folks, so if you, as well as the stock information for Kodiak Copper. And Claudia, it's very helpful for you to continue to come back. I hope we get to see you again soon to keep us updated on these ongoing discovery and expansion of your definition of these promising projects in both British Columbia, it sounds like, as well as in Arizona. And just always grateful for your presence here with our viewers on Liberty and Finance.
Well, thank you very much.